Someone turn on Amy LaVoy's microphone, please.
I think this is a new request for $75,000, but for the same thing, which is a prospect development.
Okay, that will also go in economic development. And the $673,500 for the African American Chamber, obviously I can't recommend that. We just don't have the money. But those are the three recommendations that I have, all in economic development.
Okay, next to speak with Commissioner Robertson, going down the line. Wilson.
Where did the $673,500 come in for the African American Chamber? They used to ask for 40 or 50, and we've never funded that for years because we have taken a stance here that one Chamber of Commerce should serve all, whether you're Latino or whether you're African American or whether you're Caucasian or whatever. And we've not funded African American Chamber through this board in quite some time. So where did the 673.5 request come from?
A request from Admiral Leroy.
Okay.
Now, I'll be happy to tell you, Commissioner. First of all, you've never really funded the African American Chamber.
I hope
and when
not.
when you did, you only gave them enough money to sink.
Sorry.
So the budget of $673,000, I think, is reasonable if you are really concerned about economic development in the Pensacola and Escambia County. We really don't have any economic development.
Well, if we do, we should have it through one chamber, not...
No, see, that's the problem with you. You've been proposing one chamber knowing that one chamber has not worked for African Americans, and it's never going to work for African Americans. That's why there is an African American Chamber of Commerce.
What about
you
Latinos
need to stop
and Puerto
doing
Rican?
that, Commissioner Robinson, because that creates a problem of disparity. You know it does. I know it does. And you've been saying that for years.
I thought we
Why are you denying?
I thought we had gotten away from separation of all these.
No, you haven't done away from it. You know you haven't.
Well, we don't have a Latino American Chamber, and we don't have a Puerto Rican, and we don't have a Filipino, and all. We have one chamber, and they've assured me.
The chamber that you have
let
is
me
in
finish,
turmoil.
sir.
You don't really have.
Excuse me, sir.
Right
Excuse me,
have
sir.
one chamber-
Sir, hold on one second. Just for the record, give us your name and address.
My name is Admiral Leroy. I'm serving as Executive Director of the Gulf Coast African American Chamber.
Okay.
Now, let me tell you my point, Mr. Leroy. I have asked our chamber from time to time, every year, in fact, do you represent African American businesses as much as you do any other business? They always assure me yes. The day
That's
they
a
don't,
lie,
well, let me
Commissioner.
finish, sir. The day they don't, whether it be Latino, African American, or whomever, we don't need to fund the chamber. If they do not represent.
Well, why haven't you been funding them for years and nothing?
Because I'm convinced they represent all races.
Well, you got a wrong convince that, Commissioner Robinson, and you've been doing that for years.
And I'll continue doing it.
Yeah, that's because of who you are and what you represent.
I have good rapport with
No,
them.
you don't. No, you don't. No,
Okay,
you don't.
Mr.
Don't say
Admiral,
that.
Admiral, forgive me. This is not today, at this moment, open for public forum. You walked up and started speaking, and I welcomed your conversation, your input. However, we're on a tight deadline, and you're welcome to come back when we get to the specific item on the agenda during the continued budget process.
Let me just say this before I leave.
Sir.
The Greater Pensacola Chamber, I highly respect. But the Greater Pensacola Chamber is in turmoil. You know it, I know it. They're having all kinds of problems. This county needs help. The Gulf Coast African American Chamber can give this county help, and I resent Commissioner Robinson in those statements that he continued to make, because it represents disparity. It represents a hidden racism type of statement. And all I'm saying to you is, the only reason I'm here, because the Gulf Coast African American Chamber has a program that can reach out in areas that the Greater Pensacola Chamber has never, ever tried to reach out. We can do a lot of things to help this county if we're given an opportunity. And once again, before I leave, and I'll be happy to come back if you allow me, I resent Commissioner Robinson and those statements that he's been making for years. He's been saying that for years, and they're racist.
Okay.
And they're bad. They're bad for this county.
Let me just, we're going to cut this off. Admiral, I hear.
I'm gone.
No, hold on.
But I'm telling you, this is getting really out of hand here, the way you all are doing things, and letting this guy here act like he's acting. That's just not right.
All right, thank you, sir. Let me, before you speak, Mr. May, I have one thing to say. Thank you, Admiral. Thank you. The point I'm making The point the Admiral was making was simply this. He felt that the existing Chamber of Commerce was not representing him or the African American community. The fact is, when Ed Schroeder and Jim Heiser came to the podium 2 budget processes ago, I specifically asked Mr. Heiser and Mr. Schroeder, are you going to assure me that all minorities, including the African American community, are included in the Chamber's budget process? And they assured me they would. That is the impression that Commissioner Robertson has as well. Because of the bad behavior or the interpretation of bad behavior of a select few, we don't rewrite the governing structure of government. The point is that one governing structure, which is what Commissioner Robertson was talking about, is the repository where all races and all interest groups should be governed from in a Chamber of Commerce. I happen to agree with you. I don't think you got a fair shot because of the way they were operating. That doesn't mean I'm going to kill a Chamber of Commerce or rewrite government. It means you fix the bad behavior. And I accept your point, but not as far as to criticize my fellow commissioner and think he's offline. Please, we're done on this issue, and I welcome you back. I'm responding to your comment, and you had the time to initiate the issue. I'm responding.
Commissioner, I need
You're welcome to come back later.
I need to explain economic.
Mr. Tewart, we are not through with economic development. Please proceed.
I think Commissioner May wanted to speak.
Mr. May, do you need to speak?
I'd be remiss if I didn't. Let's simply say this. I don't know what the number is. I certainly think we have the Pensacola Beach Chamber, the Gulf Breeze Chamber, the Perdido Chamber, and there are certain issues that all chambers address. And as we peel back this onion, I said when we fund outside agency, performance measures. And so we have to look at those performance measures and who are addressing our greatest needs. And there's no secret, economic attainment, educational attainment are direct correlations to each other. We have a horrible problem in the African American community with high incarceration rate, with about 78% of people incarcerated. 52% dropout rate. All those are direct correlations to economic attainment. Those issues have to be addressed. Let me preface this by saying I'm a member of the Pensacola Chamber. I'm a member of the Gulf Coast African American Chamber because we have to come together. I think that there is a critical need for the Pensacola Chamber to do what it does, and I think that there's room for sub-chambers such as the Gulf Coast African American Chamber working together, because at the end of the day, economic attainment is about $1 and it's all green, and I think we need to be looking at ways how we can and not ways why we can't, or how we can sit down at the table, as I've said, in the dialogue with the sheriff and the dialogue with the Gulf Coast African American Chamber and the Pensacola Chamber, or how we come together. These type of issues hurt us, and we need to really look at what's happening. Even Governor Scott has looked at it and said, until we address the high unemployment of African American males, we will not address the problem of high unemployment in the state of Florida. So if we're going to move this community forward, let's really, I commend you, Mr. Leroy. I probably would not have been as aggressive as you, but let's have a real conversation how economically we move this community forward, and I think this is just a start. That, $673,000 I probably would say is an astronomical number, but I think that if they come here and we're looking at performance measures, apples to apples and oranges to oranges, and the Gulf Coast African American Chamber is not performing, don't give them a dime. But we're basing this on a narrative and someone who sits down in my office and we're just going to give it out just based on sitting down in the office, everybody's open to that type of funding. That's why it's so critical to me that we have performance measures with performance outcomes. Thank you on that subject.
All right, Mr. Robinson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First off, I want to know how much is left in the fund. I'm assuming it can handle what it has traditionally handled, the $550,000.
It can.
Can it handle the $75,000?
My recollection was, and the chamber may be here to speak on this, was that there was a commitment by the board for 2 years of $75,000 apiece.
This is what Commissioner Valentino brought up, and we voted on to support this.
So this would be the second year of that.
I'm asking, is that what this is?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
In fact, this is Commissioner Valentino's money, Commissioner Robertson. I forgot about that.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand, what was there. Can we get an accounting at some point from before we finally vote on this? I want to know what they're doing and what's going on with that. I also want to fully indicate that today by all means is a precursor vote. We don't take a final vote in any way, one way or the other. I want to know what is the money that's going for foundations for the future. And let me be real clear, this is managed by the Pensacola Chamber, but it is not, Amy, this is not going to the Pensacola Chamber in as much as it's going for economic development. It's the foundation of the future, correct?
For the foundations for future allocation for that $400,000, it does go to the chamber, but it funds salaries associated with people on the economic development staff.
And from that standpoint, I want to know, what are they doing specifically to address employment in the African American community? I think they should be able to explain that to us in what they're doing. I think all of those things I fully expect that would be a part of the plan, and however anything else is going. The other question I want to know is, I want to make sure whatever we fund can be funded out of this economic development fund, because it is going to be running out of money soon, correct?
Commissioner, if I can add to what you're saying, and then Amy can respond.
Well, I've got a couple
I do
of
not
questions.
see any dedicated approach to the African American community in the existing Chamber of Commerce.
Well, they're going to
When
need
they told us they were going to address the issue, to Mr. Leroy's point.
They are going to need to address that, and they're going to need to come. They're going to need to come forward. My screen just went off. Okay. They're going to need to address that. Is my feeling of what's there. My bigger concern is, I want to make sure that at least the 400, the 150, and the 75 can actually be funded by the Economic Development Fund, because as you were saying, there's no dedicated source going to this fund.
It can withstand the 400, the 150, and the 75, and we can get you a reconciliation for the fund after lunch if you prefer that.
I would like to know where we are on that and understand. I fully understand, as you said, the issues that Mr. Leroy is indicating, but I will be very quick to say we don't give any money. We don't give any money to economic development or otherwise to Pensacola Beach Chamber. We don't give ED money to the Burrito Key Chamber. While we give them tourism money, we don't give any ED money. And so we don't give monies to other chambers within Escambia County that are also engaged within their portion of what it is. Now, as Commissioner Valentino said, I fully expect those areas to be integrated into whatever economic development. So they've got a lot of explaining to do. This is a precursor position. Anything can still change by the end of September. I'm willing to go forward with what we've indicated, the 3 we've funded in the past. But my final vote is going to be predicated on what they're going to tell me and what's moving forward with the issue to address some of the things brought up by Mr. Leroy here. And the only thing I would say from Mr. Leroy is, please be sure you get the right name of the commissioner, because it was not Commissioner Robinson that was addressing you. It was Commissioner Robertson that was addressing you.
I don't mind one bit being identified as Robertson, and I don't mind one bit being identified with this issue. If you're afraid to be identified with this issue, we're all Americans and we all should be represented accordingly.
Next to speak was Mr. Berry.
Thank you. When the dollars come out of this economic development fund, I do have reconciliation year to date. So these monies, is this only the standard funding that we're making to the chamber in these disbursements that are to the chamber?
Correct. The 400 and the 150 are considered the standard disbursements. The 75,000, I believe, was the second year of what the board had previously wanted to have done for the new prospect development.
Okay, so we don't have a separate prospect development fund, correct?
No, this would be
that line item you had in there is accumulated in this balance. That's our economic development fund.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner,
Let me explain one thing
go
real
ahead,
quick.
Mr. Stewart.
If I may. Commissioners, I said this earlier. We keep saying this money's going to the Chamber of Commerce, and technically it is, unless you change that. But it's earmarked. It's earmarked. $150,000 goes to PEDC, which you know what that is, and the other 400 goes to pay the 6 people employed with economic development. It's not supposed to be going. I did not budget one dime to pay for chamber employee salaries. It's going to Scott Luther's department to pay for his salaries this year in economic development, unless this board changes that.
In the detail, it does differentiate between the PEDC funds versus the chamber funds. So
That's right.
So there are separate. So these chamber funds that are specifically to the chamber, to speak to Administrator's point, these are going to the Scott Luth directed area at the chamber.
They're earmarked, yes.
Foundations for the Future, specifically salaries associated with the economic development.
Okay, so underneath this item that the payee Pensacola Bay Chamber, that's foundations. That's what's referred to as foundations.
That's what we always, to differentiate the allocations, that's what we call it. I don't know that the chamber calls it that
And
anymore.
the 75,000 is recruitment money that was requested by the board before you and I got here, and that was a 2-year commitment for recruitment of industry.
And we didn't use it its first year, so it's carrying forward as a 2-year. 1 year. This is an incentive, this is part of the incentive package to Airbus subcontractors.
I would like to have
Mr. Well, we haven't used it yet.
Well, I think that's what we need to know then, where it is.
Yeah, we haven't used it because we were waiting on certain aspects of Airbus to proceed. I had asked the commissioners of this last year when I came back from a previous Airbus trip, and the Airbus delays and breaking ground and Brookley Field delayed our ability to entertain the subcontractor network of Airbus, so that's why it still sits on the books.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. May.
That 75,000, is that like a cost reimbursement on performance?
That's totally related to the welcoming of foreigners to our area to
okay, I get it.
entice them to become not only taxpayers of Escambia County, but to bring the jobs here. This is for those businessmen and women it's like the Navy Credit Union. It would be used to engage with them, to meet with them, to put together and negotiate the opportunity for their business to come.
And the disbursement of those funds are approved by the commission?
They were approved by the commission, yeah, we're carrying.
You give them a lump sum and they spend it as they need it?
No, sir. Not a dime of that is spent without this commission's approval.
Okay. Next thing, Amy, in the past, Gulf Coast African American Chamber, what were they funded before they were stopped?
My recollection was that it was between $40,000 and $60,000. Some of it was funded from the general fund, and some of it was funded from the Tourist Development Council. The Tourist Development Council proceeds specifically had to do with a visitor's guide that they were putting together. The monies that they're requesting this year none of it related to tourism that I saw.
Sure, I'm wondering if the Gulf Coast African American Chamber meets the objectives and the goals that are set forth for economic development in this community. Why couldn't they be considered for at least the minimum amount of 40 that they were considered for in the past, providing they provide all of their financials in the same criteria that any other outside agency provides to the county?
Is that your motion?
Absolutely.
That would be a motion then for a change for the budget.
Absolutely.
Well, let me
Mr.
make sure,
Mr. Tour.
everybody knows that is economic development money that's earmarked. If you're going to give money to the African American Chamber, that goes where the money's coming from.
Well, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I consider their initiatives part of
But
economic
you're taking away
development.
salary money. This is salary money. This
Mr.
is
May.
money to pay salaries, guys. So you got to understand, this money is earmarked for salaries. It's not
Mr.
earmarked.
Berry.
I was going to ask if my peer might be kind enough to, I'm certainly happy to engage this discussion over the next few days.
Okay.
And is it something we can talk about at a later,
I would like,
at a later point in
I
time,
think where
at a
we're
little
going
more
now,
length?
gentlemen, just for the record, is, time out. We'll break at 12 noon. So let's agree for sure that we'll break at 12 noon and then reconvene at 1:30. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's certainly something that I'd be happy to entertain the discussion, and maybe without a formal action right now, because it is a little bit of a change in protocol for what I was planning for today.
Absolutely. I can yield to that. Mr. Leroy, go ahead, and I'll make it some.
I'm trying to understand, are you suggesting that they give us $40,000?
I'm suggesting that they restore whatever the funding were that they gave you in the past, Mr. Leroy.
But they don't have to do that, Commissioner. That's unacceptable. You're not going to accept that.
Absolutely. Well, we'll move
This
forward
is
and continue this.
discrimination in the highest form. We cannot accept $40,000 because it's not going to help us do anything to be a player like the Greater Pensacola Chamber. We want equal opportunity. We want equal chance to show what we can do if we're ever given the proper funds, the same way you give the Greater Pensacola Chamber.
Well, can I say this, Mr. Leroy, and let's move forward? and I'm certainly going to advocate for the disenfranchised, and particularly those who have been left out of the process. I know that Scott Luth is moving forward, and there's some changes at the chamber. As Commissioner Berry said, let's continue this conversation, and I would hope that you would have a meeting with Scott Luth at the chamber, and before we take a final vote on this budget, that there'll be some cooperation and collaboration and some type of mutual agreement between the Gulf Coast African
Only
American
if
Chamber.
Scott Luth meet with me. I'm not going to Scott Luth. I'm not going to the
Well,
Greater
I'll be
Pensacola
happy to.
Chamber because they have denied us forever and forever, the same
Good.
way this county commission has denied us.
Well,
Now,
I'm
we're
going
not going to accept no little crumbs when you know we can't perform with crumbs. We want an equal opportunity. We want equal justice under the law, and you all can find a way to do this if you want to. Otherwise, you're playing games.
hold on one second.
Mr.
And then I'll yield to whatever
No, Mr.
Commissioner
May,
wants to talk.
you still have the floor.
I'm going to facilitate that meeting to sit down and begin conversations, Mr. Leroy, and I support what you're doing. We're certainly going to look for economic development, particularly in those communities that have not had economic development, particularly the African American community. So I think that there's a conversation that we need to have, and I don't think we're going to hash it out today, and I certainly don't think that it's going to happen by certainly making any type of threats or pushing people into a corner. We have to learn to work together.
I'm
Hold
not
on,
making a
Mr.
threat,
Leroy.
Commissioner.
Mr. Leroy, please.
I'm not making a threat.
Okay.
And Mr. Leroy,
Maybe I'm a
please.
little emotional.
Mr.
I tell
Leroy.
you, it's your
But my
passion, and I
point is-
respect that.
My point is,
Mr.
you all
Leroy.
got...
Mr. Leroy, I am
What?
not allowing speakers today. You've had the floor, and you're not being denied.
So
Now
why
stand
you
down
take
a
that? Why you
second,
take that gavel and hit it like that?
because you're
man?
out of order. Now stand down until I'm running this commission meeting, not you. Mr. May, I'd like to appoint you, absent any objection from the fellow commissioners, to run interference, if you will, if that's the right term, with Mr. Leroy and the Chamber of Commerce. Is that acceptable? Is that acceptable?
We will rescind that motion, and we will be happy to yield to that and work on that,
Okay,
Mr.
then
Chair.
this issue is over with. We're moving on and late.
Commissioner-
Thank you.
Commissioner
Mr. Robinson has the last word.
If I could, there seems to be a little talk about what's happening and what people are doing. If I can remind everybody, Foundations for the Future, Amy, you can confirm this, was given to a situation as a public-private. And actually, what is happening, the chamber has gone out and raised money in the private sector. We have simply invested in a position that is the same thing in private sector money. We didn't give them just something to go fund out and go do whatever. They have private sector support. In fact, they supposed to be getting much more money than $400,000.
got some evidence.
Mr. Leroy, hold on one second. They're much more, you need to get with them and figure out, because there's much more contribution coming from private sector.
Commissioner. I have evidence to show that you all have given them tons of money.
You can do whatever you want to. $400,000.
I'm not doing it. I have
This is
information
exactly
over
what I
here.
do not, excuse me, I'm calling order here. Now, this is not going to go on.
I understand that.
And no sub-discussions of this granular level are going to be exploded upon at this time. This is over with, Mr. Leroy. We're moving on to the next topic. Thank you, Commissioner Robinson. Did you have anything else about the budget item in
My
general?
only issue was to simply say PEDC is, to me, Foundations for the Future is not an equivalent what you're talking about.
That's
PEDC
exactly
is
correct.
what's given for economic development to everyone. Who are the PEDC members on this board?
This, Mr. Berry and Mr. Robertson.
Okay. I mean, that's a case of where we need to be looking at to draw these issues. As you do this, Commissioner May, this is where you should be looking at, is through where the PEDC does, and discuss with Mr. Luth what is going on. That's what we give for countywide economic development, is to the PEDC.
Okay, this issue obviously needs more attention given to the African American interest, along with the concern we have on the budget in general for the chamber. I would ask Mr. Leroy to, without objection, Mr. May will be our point person on this engagement. You'll invite Mr. Luth to your office along with Mr. Leroy.
I've already begun to work with Mr. Luth on a couple of things I'm going to be seeing down.
Okay,
Mr. Leroy.
and then I'd like you to present it back at your convenience when you feel you have some resolution.
And I've got a point
Is
to
that
more.
acceptable?
Let's move on.
Let's see. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Tewart, were you through with the topic?
I hope so.
Okay. Any other, Grover, your light's still
Let's
lit?
go.
Anything else? Nope. Okay. Well, then let's recess at this time, if we may. It's 12 noon, and we'll reconvene at 1:30 sharp. Thank you.
Gene broke that damn game.
By the way, look what happened.
You broke it?
Stephen, look what happened. Jesus Christ.
You been working out there. You broke that thing.